Most of my wisdom work over the course of the past year has been looking at 18th century conceptions of the relationship of other-directed sentiments and virtues to wisdom proper. I've been looking mostly at, over the course of the past year, three philosophers in particular: David Hume, Adam Smith, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And the definition on which I want to focus today comes from what has to be at once the most famous text of the Enlightenment and was almost certainly the least read text of the Enlightenment. And that's the massive Encyclopédie of Diderot and d'Alembert. So what then does one expect to find if you come upon sagesse? What then does one find? We get in the first line. Wisdom consists in fulfilling with exactness our duties to the divine as much as to ourselves and to others. But where will it discover motives to persist in these, if not in the sentiment of our immortality? Thus, the truly wise man is an immortal man, a man who outlives himself and who carries his hopes beyond his passing. Now, this raises a tremendous amount of questions. At least two deserve some sort of attempt at answer here. First is, how does immortality support virtue? That's the first question on the table here. Second, even if it does support virtue, why call that wisdom? What do these two things have to do with each other? Let's get into it by going through the first question. How does the sentiment of immortality help virtue? The formal claim is that immortality, the sentiment thereof, will help encourage virtue by helping us overcome the self. It'll employ our deepest longings to help restrain more familiar and selfish desires. But even if that's true, even if you're willing to grant the author that, it doesn't even begin to answer a much more perplexing question. What does that have to do with wisdom? Why should we find this in the article on sagesse? So what will wisdom without immortality look like? Clearly we have an answer here. Not much. The basic claim is that wisdom without this sentiment is nothing more than vanity. Without immortality, the only goods a wise man could possibly care about: honor, recognition, and esteem. But for our purposes as wisdom researchers, there's one claim I think that's worth pulling out here without going into that context. And that is, the claim seems to be that if we preclude the possibility of something beyond immediate human life, if we preclude the possibility of transcendence, this comes at a high cost. This seems to be one of the points of sagesse. If we do away with this possibility, the only goods available to even the wisest of human beings are the external goods of esteem, honor, and recognition. There's a pretty radical claim being made here, and that is that what is classically considered the highest life, the life of the love of wisdom, without this thing that they're eager to put before us, is fundamentally indistinguishable from what was classically considered the most vulgar human life. Without the sentiment of immortality, the love of wisdom and the love of eternal goods, the highest and the lowest life, are indistinguishable. I think sagesse raises two crucial questions I want to end with. The first is, quite simply, is true wisdom, wisdom tout court, in fact something fundamentally different from practical wisdom? That is, does the view of wisdom as practical rationality or as good decision-making or judgment in fact capture the whole of wisdom? Secondly and finally, it seems to me that sagesse also puts forth in a somewhat dramatic way the relationship of wisdom to transcendence. It clearly believes that these two things are inseparable. But there's a tradition nonetheless to which this is responding to. And this article in the Encyclopédie of all places, right in the middle of the scientific enlightenment, is in fact drawing deeply upon at least two texts, though there are many other references. One is the Wisdom of Solomon from the Apocrypha, and the second is Plato's Phaedo, in which these arguments that I've only nodded at here come out to be much more well-developed. It seems to me worth asking at the very least whether there is something in fact in this tradition that's worth recovering for us in our collective aspirations to begin to understand wisdom in the modern contemporary context.